The massive Zendari warship emerged from the darkness of space, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight across Earth's atmosphere like a cosmic prism. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at her observatory window, her heart racing as she watched humanity's first contact with an alien civilization unfold. But something about their movements caught her trained eye. Something that would change everything. The Zendari had arrived with overwhelming force. 12 capital ships and hundreds of smaller vessels, positioning themselves strategically around Earth's major population centers. Their message was clear and devastating. Earth was now part of the Zendari Empire, and resistance was futile. Supreme Commander Nexus stood on his flagship's bridge, his translucent scales shifting colors with satisfaction as he surveyed the primitive world below. These humans haven't even established lunar colonies, he communicated to his officers through neural channels. Their technological development is centuries behind ours. This conquest will be swift. But Dr. Chen had noticed something during the first broadcast. While the Zendari's technology was impressive, their movements seemed labored, even in their own ships. As head of xenobiology at the Global Defense Institute, she immediately began analyzing their physical characteristics. Working through the night in her secret underground lab, Sarah compiled data from various sensors and observations. The Zendari's biosignatures revealed something extraordinary. Their cellular structure was adapted to a much lower gravity environment. Earth's gravity was nearly twice what they were accustomed to, and our atmosphere's oxygen levels were almost toxic to their systems. The Zendari demanded Earth's surrender within 7 days. World leaders scrambled to respond, many advocating immediate capitulation. But Sarah had already contacted General Maya Rodriguez, head of Earth's United Defense Force, with her findings. "They're not as invincible as they want us to believe," Sarah explained, projecting her data onto the war room screens. "Their bodies are literally struggling against our planet's natural conditions. Every moment they spend in our gravity weakens them." General Rodriguez studied the data intently. "Can we use this?" "Better," Sarah replied. "We can turn our whole planet into a weapon. But first, we need them to think they've won." The plan took shape quickly. While world governments publicly debated surrender terms, a secret network of resistance cells formed underground. Sarah's team worked tirelessly to develop specialized weapons that would exploit the Zendari's biological weaknesses. Commander Nexus grew increasingly suspicious of the humans' apparent disorganization. Their military forces remained in disarray, their leaders argued publicly, and their media broadcast scenes of panic and resignation. It seemed too chaotic, too perfect. His doubts were confirmed when his chief scientist reported anomalies in their atmospheric readings. "The humans are releasing unusual gas combinations from multiple locations," the scientist reported. "It appears random, but the pattern suggests." Before he could finish, alarms blared throughout the flagship. Dozens of Zendari warriors collapsed, their respiratory systems overwhelmed by the carefully engineered atmospheric changes. Sarah's team had developed a way to temporarily increase oxygen concentration in targeted areas, creating zones that were deadly to Zendari biology, but harmless to humans. "Impossible," Nexus gasped, feeling his own strength failing as the flagship's air filtration systems malfunctioned. These primitives couldn't have. But they had. While the Zendari were busy preparing for their grand conquest, humanity had already begun their counterattack. Dr. Chen's discovery had given Earth its first real advantage in what would become known as the Liberation War. As Nexus watched his mighty fleet falter against an enemy he had gravely underestimated, Sarah's voice came through all frequencies. "You thought Earth was weak because we hadn't conquered space. But we've spent millennia conquering something far more challenging, our own world. Welcome to Earth, Commander. Let's see how well you adapt." The first phase of humanity's resistance had begun, and the Zendari were about to learn why underestimating Earth was their greatest mistake. In the depths of an abandoned mine shaft in Colorado, converted into humanity's most advanced research facility, Dr. Sarah Chen studied the holographic display of Zendari ship movements. 3 weeks had passed since their initial attack, and the aliens believed they were winning. That illusion was humanity's greatest weapon. Captain Marcus Rivera, leader of the newly formed Ghost Squadron, stood beside her, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. "The Zendari are expanding their ground presence," he reported. "They're setting up processing centers for human registration in major cities." "Perfect," Sarah replied, adjusting her data models. "Every time they send troops to the surface, they expose themselves to our advantage." She pulled up new biological scans of captured Zendari equipment. Their environmental suits can't fully compensate for Earth's gravity. Even their strongest soldiers tire after just hours of surface operations. The facility bustled with activity as scientists and soldiers worked together, turning Earth's natural conditions into weapons. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Sarah's chief engineer, approached with their latest breakthrough. "The gravity amplifiers are ready," she announced, displaying a small device that could create localized fields of increased gravitational force. "Even a 20% increase will devastate their troops." But the Zendari weren't idle. Supreme Commander Nexus had noticed the pattern of atmospheric anomalies that had weakened his forces. His scientists developed new filtration systems, and his warriors now moved in sealed environments. "These humans are clever," he admitted to his war council, "but they merely delay the inevitable." What Nexus didn't realize was that humanity's resistance went far deeper than atmospheric manipulation. In universities, military bases, and hidden bunkers across the globe, people worked tirelessly to understand and counter Zendari technology. Every transmission they sent, every piece of equipment they deployed, was studied and analyzed. Dr. James Wong, Earth's leading quantum physicist, made a crucial discovery about their FTL communications. "Their quantum entanglement network is sophisticated," he explained to the resistance leadership, "but it's built on surprisingly basic encryption. They never expected anyone to crack their codes." This overconfidence proved costly. Earth's best hackers, led by former cybersecurity expert Aisha Patel, began infiltrating Zendari systems. They didn't destroy or disrupt. Not yet. They watched, learned, and prepared for the moment when knowledge would become power. In orbit, the Zendari grew increasingly frustrated. Their efforts to establish ground control met with constant, inexplicable equipment failures. Gravity amplifiers hidden in urban centers caused their troops to collapse from exhaustion. Atmospheric processors concealed in Earth's vast wilderness created zones where only humans could safely operate. "These setbacks are unacceptable," Nexus raged at his commanders. "How can primitives who haven't even reached their moon cause us such trouble?" But his anger masked a growing fear. The humans weren't fighting like any species they'd encountered before. They didn't mass armies or launch obvious attacks. They fought like the planet itself was their ally. In the resistance facility, Sarah received word of a new Zendari initiative. "They're planning to deploy atmospheric processors," she told General Rodriguez. "They want to alter Earth's atmosphere to match their homeworld." The general smiled grimly. "They still think this is about the air. They haven't realized that Earth's gravity is our true weapon." She turned to Captain Rivera. "How soon can your teams deploy Dr. Tanaka's devices?" "Ghost Squadron is ready," Marcus answered. "We've trained in enhanced gravity conditions. When these amplifiers activate, we'll be the only ones still standing." Sarah watched as teams of resistance fighters moved out, carrying technology that would turn Earth's natural forces against the invaders. The Zendari's arrogance in assuming humanity was primitive had given Earth time. Time to prepare, adapt, and plan. "They think we're losing," Sarah mused, watching the Zendari ships through her observatory's telescope. "They don't understand that humans have spent our entire existence learning to turn disadvantages into strengths. We never needed to conquer space because we learned something far more valuable. We learned to survive." As night fell over Earth, thousands of gravity amplifiers waited in silence, ready to remind the Zendari why this planet had forged humanity into something far stronger than they could imagine. The real war was about to begin, And Earth's greatest defense wasn't its technology or weapons. It was the resilience of its people. Operation Thunderstrike began in darkness. Across the globe, resistance fighters checked their equipment one final time. In the command center, Dr. Sarah Chen watched as thousands of green dots representing human operatives moved into position. Everything hinged on perfect timing and the element of surprise. All teams report ready. Captain Rivera's voice came through the secure channel. His Ghost Squadron had spent months preparing for this moment, training in enhanced gravity conditions until they could fight at peak efficiency even under 3 times Earth's normal pull. Atmospheric conditions are optimal, Dr. Tanaka reported from her station. The Zendari's environmental systems won't be able to compensate for what's coming. General Rodriguez gave the command they'd all been waiting for. Execute Thunderstrike. Across Earth, thousands of gravity amplifiers activated simultaneously. In every major city where the Zendari had established their processing centers, the already challenging Earth gravity doubled, then tripled. Zendari troops, even in their advanced environmental suits, crumpled under the overwhelming force. Ghost Squadron struck first. Moving with practiced ease through the enhanced gravity fields, they breached the New York Processing Center. The Zendari guards, struggling just to stand, watched in disbelief as humans moved effortlessly through conditions that should have incapacitated both species. Impossible, a Zendari commander gasped as Marcus Rivera's team swept through their defenses like they were standing still. How are they doing this? The answer was simple: preparation. While the Zendari had relied on their technology to protect them, humans had adapted their bodies and tactics to turn Earth's gravity into a weapon. Every member of Ghost Squadron had trained for months under increasingly harsh conditions, building strength and endurance that the Zendari couldn't match. In orbit, Supreme Commander Nexus received desperate distress calls from his ground forces. "We're being overrun," they reported. "The humans, they're not affected by the gravity weapons. They're everywhere." But gravity was just the first phase. As the Zendari struggled to respond, Aisha Patel's cyber warfare team launched their attack. Months of silent observation paid off as they triggered their virus, designed to exploit the overconfident simplicity of Zendari encryption. Ship after ship lost power as their systems were overwhelmed. Emergency protocols failed. Life support systems went haywire, creating pockets of unbreathable atmosphere throughout the Zendari fleet. Dr. Wang's quantum communication disruptors activated, cutting off the ships from each other and their homeworld. Status report. Nexus demanded, watching as his mighty fleet descended into chaos. "We've lost contact with 60% of our ground forces," his second-in-command reported. "Our atmospheric processors are offline, and gravity weapons are being used against our troops. The humans, they're not just fighting back. They're hunting us." In London, Paris, Beijing, and dozens of other cities, the scene was the same. Human resistance fighters, led by specially trained units like Ghost Squadron, moved systematically through Zendari installations. Their knowledge of the terrain, combined with their natural advantages and months of preparation, made them unstoppable. Sarah watched from the command center as the Zendari's carefully constructed occupation crumbled. "They never understood," she said to General Rodriguez. "Earth's gravity, our atmosphere, these weren't obstacles we needed to overcome. They were challenges that made us stronger." The general nodded, watching as more Zendari ships lost power and drifted helplessly in orbit. They saw our planet's conditions as hostile. They never imagined we'd turn those same conditions into our greatest weapon. In his flagship, now running on emergency power, Nexus finally understood their mistake. The humans hadn't been disorganized or primitive. Every setback, every apparent weakness, had been calculated to hide their true capabilities. While the Zendari had been celebrating their easy conquest, humanity had been preparing for this moment. "All remaining forces," he broadcast on all frequencies, "fall back to the ships. We need to regroup." And his message cut off as the flagship's systems failed completely. On the ground, Marcus led his team through the last Zendari stronghold in New York. The alien warriors, once so confident in their superiority, now fled from humans who moved like titans through the crushing gravity. "Command," he reported, "Phase 1 is complete. The ground forces are neutralized." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Excellent work, Captain. Begin Phase 2. She turned to Dr. Tanaka. "Are the electromagnetic pulse generators ready?" "Yes," Yuki replied, her fingers dancing across her console. "Once activated, they'll disable any remaining Zendari ships trying to land or launch." The battle wasn't over. The Zendari still had ships in orbit, and their homeworld would eventually wonder why they'd lost contact. But today had proven something vital. Humanity wasn't just capable of resisting the invasion. They were capable of winning. The captured Zendari command ship hung in Earth's orbit like a wounded leviathan. Inside its cavernous halls, Dr. Sarah Chen led a team of scientists through rooms filled with alien technology. Each discovery confirmed what they'd suspected. The Zendari's apparent technological superiority masked fundamental weaknesses. Their entire civilization evolved in low-gravity environments, Sarah explained to the assembled military leaders, projecting her findings onto the ship's holographic displays. They never needed to develop efficient energy systems because their homeworld didn't demand it. Everything they built was designed for optimal conditions. Dr. Tanaka pointed to the ship's structural analysis. "Their hull materials are incredibly advanced, but they're not designed to withstand sustained gravitational stress. That's why our gravity weapons were so effective. They literally stressed the ships to their breaking point." In the ship's vast hangar, Captain Rivera supervised as engineering teams reverse-engineered Zendari vehicles. "Their propulsion systems are remarkable," he reported, "but they consume enormous amounts of energy. They never learned to be efficient because they never had to fight against real planetary gravity." Supreme Commander Nexus, now held in a specially designed containment facility, watched through one-way glass as humans systematically dismantled his fleet's technological advantages. His scales had turned a pale gray, a sign of deep distress in his species. "You don't understand what you're doing," he warned his guards. "The Empire will send more ships when they learn of this." General Rodriguez, who had come to interrogate him, smiled coldly. "We're counting on it, Commander. In fact, we've already prepared our welcome for them." In orbit, the remaining Zendari ships that hadn't been captured or disabled were trapped in a web of electromagnetic fields, unable to escape or communicate with their homeworld. But humanity wasn't interested in merely defending anymore. They had bigger plans. Aisha Patel's cyber warfare team had completely mapped the Zendari's FTL communication network. "Their entire empire relies on quantum entanglement channels," she explained during a strategy session. "But they only use basic encryption because they never expected anyone to access their technology. We can now monitor every transmission across their empire." Dr. Wang's team had made even more startling discoveries. Their FTL drives work by creating artificial low-gravity corridors through space, he revealed. "It's brilliant engineering, but it's also their greatest vulnerability. They can only travel through regions where they can maintain their preferred gravitational conditions." Sarah's eyes lit up with understanding. "So we can predict exactly where their reinforcements will emerge. They'll have no choice. They have to use specific routes where space can support their gravitational requirements." The implications were enormous. Humanity wasn't just fighting off an invasion. They were learning how to take the fight to the enemy. Earth's scientists and engineers worked around the clock, adapting Zendari technology to work under Earth conditions while developing new weapons specifically designed to exploit their weaknesses. In his secured laboratory, Dr. Wang put the finishing touches on humanity's newest weapon, a device that could project Earth-level gravity through space. "We're not just defending Earth anymore," he told Sarah. "We're creating zones in space where we have the advantage." The first test of the spatial gravity projector exceeded all expectations. A field of Earth-normal gravity expanded into space, creating a zone where human ships could operate at full efficiency, while Zendari vessels struggled just to maintain their structural integrity. Captain Rivera led the first space combat training missions, teaching pilots how to use Earth's gravity as both weapon and shield. The Zendari built their empire by finding worlds they could easily dominate, he told his squadrons. They never had to adapt or innovate. That's their weakness, and our strength. Sarah watched from the captured command ship as human fighters practiced maneuvers that would have been impossible for Zendari pilots. Earth's warriors moved with confidence through space, their ships modified to take advantage of the very conditions that the Zendari found so hostile. They thought Earth was a primitive backwater, General Rodriguez observed, standing beside her. They never understood that surviving on Earth made us stronger than they could imagine. Every challenge our world presented, the gravity, the atmospheric pressure, the extreme weather, forced us to adapt and innovate. In his cell, Nexus received reports of humanity's progress with growing horror. The primitives weren't just using Zendari technology. They were improving it, adapting it to work in conditions that his people had always avoided. They were turning the very laws of physics that had shaped Zendari civilization into weapons. Sarah's voice came through the ship's communication system, addressing all stations. The Zendari reinforcements will arrive in 12 hours. Their quantum communications show they're sending 3 times the ships we faced before. She paused, letting the news sink in. But this time, we're ready. This time, we're not just defending our world, we're showing them why Earth's harsh conditions created a species they should never have underestimated. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to show the galaxy why Earth's children had become something extraordinary. The reinforcement fleet of the Zendari Empire emerged from FTL, exactly where Dr. Wong had predicted. 300 ships, the pride of the Empire's military might, appeared at the edge of the solar system. They expected to find a defeated Earth, a primitive world ready to be conquered. Instead, they found humanity waiting for them. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's first hybrid warship combining human innovation with adapted Zendari technology. Around her, crews monitored systems that would have been impossible just months ago. Gravity projection fields at full power, reported Dr. Tanaka from her station. The corridors are set. General Rodriguez gave the order that would begin Earth's final stand. Execute Operation Terminus. The space around the Zendari fleet suddenly changed. Carefully positioned gravity projectors activated, creating zones of crushing Earth normal gravity in precise patterns. The alien ships, designed for the gentle pull of their homeworld, immediately began showing signs of stress. By the void, the Zendari fleet commander watched in horror as warning lights flooded his bridge. How are they controlling gravity itself? Captain Rivera's voice cut through all frequencies, broadcasting to the entire Zendari fleet. Welcome to Earth space. You're about to learn why evolving on a death world made us stronger than you could imagine. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. Human ships, piloted by crews who had trained their entire lives under Earth's gravity, moved through the artificially created gravity fields with deadly precision. The Zendari found themselves trapped in a 3-dimensional maze where every route of escape led to zones their ships couldn't survive. From her cyber warfare command center, Aisha Patel launched the final version of their quantum virus. Their entire communication network is compromised, she announced. They can't coordinate their defense. The Zendari's technological advantage, built on thousands of years of being the strongest force in known space, crumbled in hours. Their ships, unable to maintain structural integrity under the shifting gravitational forces, began surrendering one by one. In his containment cell, Supreme Commander Nexus watched the battle through provided feeds. His scales had turned almost white, a sign of total submission in his species. "We never imagined," he whispered. "All these centuries, we thought our evolution in low gravity made us superior. We never considered that evolving on a high-gravity world would make us stronger." Sarah had come to witness his reaction. That surviving on Earth would force us to become something extraordinary. Your people chose the easy path, Commander. Humanity never had that luxury. The battle above Earth turned into a rout. The Zendari fleet, unable to fight effectively in conditions they had never prepared for, surrendered to forces they had dismissed as primitive just months ago. But humanity's victory wasn't just military. It was technological and biological. Dr. Wang's gravity control systems had revolutionized space travel. Dr. Tanaka's hybrid engines combined Zendari efficiency with human durability. And perhaps most importantly, Earth's harsh conditions had created warriors who could fight and win in environments that the self-proclaimed superior species found impossible. In the aftermath, as human ships secured the surrendered Zendari fleet, General Rodriguez called a meeting of Earth's leadership. "We've won more than a war," she declared. "We've proven that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to adapt and overcome." Sarah added, "The Zendari Empire expanded through space, looking for easy conquests. They avoided worlds like Earth because they thought harsh conditions meant primitive life. They never understood that those same conditions forced us to become something unique in the galaxy." The final surrender was signed aboard the Defiance. The Zendari Empire, for the first time in its history, was forced to acknowledge a superior force. The terms were surprisingly generous. Humanity had no interest in revenge or domination. Instead, they offered partnership and shared advancement, under one non-negotiable condition. The galaxy would know that underestimating Earth was a mistake no species should ever make again. As the Zendari diplomats departed, Captain Rivera joined Sarah at the observation deck. Together, they watched Earth rotate below, its powerful gravity now recognized not as a hindrance, but as the force that had forged humanity into something remarkable. "They called us primitive because we hadn't conquered space," Sarah mused. "They never understood that conquering Earth's gravity, surviving its atmosphere, adapting to its challenges, that made us stronger than any species that evolved in gentle conditions." The war was over, but humanity's journey was just beginning. With their newfound knowledge and proven strength, Earth's children were ready to take their place among the stars. Not as conquerors like the Zendari, but as pioneers and innovators who had learned to thrive in conditions that others feared. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. They had proven that what others saw as weakness was actually their greatest strength. The harsh world that had forged them had also given them the power to defend it. And now, to reach for the stars on their own terms.